friends, and welcome back to the Library of the Silly Wife. So today I want to talk to you about my nonfiction November. This is going to be my nonfiction November wrap-up. And I'm so excited because I actually read a book for each prompt. And this is my very first year to participate in nonfiction November, so this makes me very happy that I was able to fully participate. So I'm pretty thrilled. So if you know about nonfiction November, you know that Olive at A Book Olive gave us the 4 prompts to help us in our nonfiction reading, and she gave them in a different order, and I'm sorry I never can remember what order she gave them in, but the names or the prompts are voice, design, sport, and true. And you could take those and you could interpret them in any way you chose, just so long as you were reading nonfiction. So the first prompt, voice, I chose a book about singers. And I've already talked about this book, so I'll spare you. I won't go into big detail, but it's The Story of the Trapp Family Singers by Maria Augusta Trapp. Yes, it's the story that The Sound of Music is based on. I love this book. I highly recommend it. It is a fascinating story, and that's all I'll say about that, so I don't insult your intelligence. Now for the next prompt, it was design, and I kind of took it so that I could use design as in the cover design, and it's for this one, The Swamp Fox by John Aller. And I've shown you this one before, but I just think the cover, the design of this cover is beautiful, and I loved it. I thought it was such a pretty cover, so that's my design pick. And this is the story of how Francis Marion saved the American Revolution. I knew about Francis Marion. I had an understanding, I thought, of the Swamp Fox, but I didn't really know just how important he had been to the American Revolution. And this book explains it so clearly, and it's just a fascinating read. I learned so much, not just about Francis Marion, but about the Revolutionary War in itself. And I've got a couple things that I wanted to point out, and I marked them here. First of all, again, something I did not know was that more battles, engagements, and skirmishes were fought in South Carolina during the Revolution than in any other colony. The other thing that I found super fascinating was nearly 20% of all Americans who died in battle in the Revolution died in South Carolina in the last 2 years of the war. That's the kind of stuff you don't typically learn when you are reading about history in school. We focus mostly on Boston, we focus mostly on the New England colonies and what George Washington was doing, and all that stuff is very important. But what Francis Marion did in the swamps in South Carolina was vital, and this book tells that story. And it is a fabulous portrait of who he was, not only as a military tactician and strategist, but who he was as a man, and his character, his humility, and it was just really, really good. This is a history, so it's one of those that I really needed to focus while I was reading, especially since I'm not super familiar with South Carolina, and there are a lot of names and places that are mentioned. But don't let that throw you. I wasn't familiar with it, and I still thoroughly enjoyed this book. I would recommend this one to you, definitely, definitely. Now, the book that I read for the prompt True was a true crime book, and it's called Innocent Victims by Scott Wisnant. This is the story of a wife and 2 daughters who are horrifically murdered in their home. And we follow the story of a man who is arrested for their murders. Now, I am not going to tell you any more about this story, other than to say, first of all, that Scott Wisnant does a fabulous job. His writing style was very good. I was able to follow along. It flowed well. It was a quick read. I was turning the pages. I couldn't wait to see. I say turning the pages. I did it on an ebook, but you know what I mean. I just couldn't wait to find out what was going to happen. But this is one of those books that the result How it all turns out is terrible. And that's not Scott Wisniewski's fault. He's just reporting the story. This book was so infuriating. And again, I don't really want to go into it too much in case this is the kind of thing you like to read. But it just goes to show that if you have power in any way, you can do whatever you want. And it shows that the government is getting away with stuff every day. Don't mistake me, I'm not speaking against any specific administration or anything like that, because that's not what I'm doing at all. I'm talking about the bureaucracy and the government in general. We no longer have to follow our own laws. If you are a member of Congress, you do whatever you want. And that kind of filters down into local governments, state governments, and it really stinks. And this book infuriated me. So if you want to read a book that will infuriate you and really get a hold of your sense of social justice, then this might be the book for you. Because of that, I gave this book 3 stars. Now, again, the writing style is very good, but the material just burned me up. Now, I do also want to caution you, I borrowed this book via ebook from the Hoopla app. And I feel that some of the formatting from the print book was not saved when they did the ebook formatting. And so some places where there should have been maybe larger gaps or spaces in between paragraphs to show that we were now moving from, say, the defense point of view to the prosecution, those spacings were left out. And you just were reading along, then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, these aren't the same people, or this is somebody else thinking here. So, that was a little bit of a struggle. And but again, if I was reading in a very quiet place, or if I had my headphones in, I was just kind of listening to background music so that I wasn't hearing the hustle and bustle of my house, then I was able to keep up. But I do want you to be aware that that there was a formatting issue in that ebook. Now, the final pick was The Prompt Sport. And for this one, I sort of fell down the booktube rabbit hole. I've been seeing a lot of people, at least the people that I follow and that I watch on my personal page, they've talked about this book and reviewed it, and it's called Rough Magic by Laura Pryor Palmer. And this is the story about the author, Laura Pryor Palmer. And when she was 19, she joined the Mongolian Derby, I believe is what she calls it. And it is the longest horse race in the world. It's over 1,000 miles in Mongolia over the Mongolian steppe. She enters this race with no preparation. She does it basically on a whim, and she has no idea what she's getting into. And you know from the start that she wins the race. So that's not a spoiler. It's on the cover. I mean, you know that she wins the race. But you can't, as you're following along with her, you just can't imagine how she can possibly win this thing. But it's so interesting, and the writing was just beautiful. Beautiful, but also quirky, and the things that she would think of while she was out on the race. One minute she'd be quoting The Tempest by Shakespeare, and the next minute she's talking about some off-the-wall thought that comes to her mind. And some people might be bothered by that, but I just loved it because it seemed so real. It was just such an honest perspective. She was just being herself, quirkiness and all, and I loved it. The story was exciting. It was quite an adventure, and I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was fabulous, but I listened to it on audiobook, and the narrator was a British actress by the name of Henrietta Mear, and I've Googled her. I've looked her up. She's a very lovely woman. She has a very nice reading voice. She emotes very well. She does amazing character voices, I thought, and she keeps it up. She's very, like, she doesn't mess up throughout. I mean, it's very consistent. But here was the problem. She has a lisp. And I think that she may have actually been chosen as the narrator for this because her voice is very young and because she has a lisp. Because I discovered that Laura Pryor Palmer also has a lisp. So why is this a problem? In just everyday talking, this would not be a problem. And probably for most people, it wouldn't be a problem to you listening to the audiobook. But I have hearing deficiencies. So I can hear all the sounds, but unless things are spoken very crisply and people enunciate very clearly and cleanly, I very often cannot understand the words that people are saying. I've become really good at reading lips when people talk to me. And when you have an audiobook, you just don't have that option. And so I struggled pretty terribly through this audiobook. I tried several different methods of listening to it. I listened to it with the volume down. I listened to it with the volume way up. I listened to it in headphones. I listened to it just listening through my phone. I listened to it Bluetoothing it through speakers. I typically listen to audiobooks at about 1.5 times speed. And so I listened to it there. I also slowed it down to 1.25. I slowed it down to just regular speed, and nothing helped. The lisp is such that it's not every S sound that is made that has the sound, but horses is a word that it's very strong and pronounced in, and that word was over and over and over again. And there were some other words that were said over and over and over again that had a lot of S's in the middle, and the lisp was very pronounced in those. So for me, as having hearing impairment, it just sounded like the ocean. It was just a lot of shh all the time. And it was just extremely frustrating and very grating, to the point that I actually missed quite a few things that were said. And I even hate to even mention this because she's a great narrator, and for most people this probably would not be a problem, but I struggled. I really struggled, and it nearly ruined it for me, but I stuck in there and I finished it, and I was glad I did, because I loved the book so much. But probably I'm going to buy the book and read it again, just, you know, when I have the time, and pick up the things that I know that I missed because I just could not understand the words. And I will be very cautious in the future. If I see that Henrietta Meir is the narrator for another book, I'm probably not going to listen to it. Again, it's not against her. When I watched some videos of her, the lisp is actually hardly perceptible. But again, I'm used to reading lips along with listening. And so I think it was just because I could not see her speaking that I was really struggling. So I just wanted to at least let you know, in case you have hearing impairment, or if you know someone who does, that this could be a struggle on an audiobook for you. But if not, then I would highly recommend the audiobook, because she's a great actress, and I enjoyed her voices and everything. So, but like I said, I did love the book, and I gave it 5 stars. So that is my Nonfiction November wrap up. Did you finish anything for Nonfiction November? Did you participate? Have my reviews made you think, yeah, I might want to try that book, or absolutely no way do I want to try that book? Let me know down in the comments what you think. Let me know if you are interested in nonfiction reading. I will tell you, I do a lot of nonfiction reading throughout the year, so if you have suggestions, let me know. I'd love to know. But I guess that will do it for today. I hope you find plenty of time to read, and I'll talk to you later.